The author found this IZ-56 completely by accident. The motorcycle was literally living out its days in the forest, covered with dry branches, leaves and grass, and the previous owner decided to lay its single-cylinder soul to rest right there. An enthusiast who likes to restore old equipment dug it up and made a quick inspection. A torn seats, a rusty headlight, a broken handle of the handbrake, a rusted muffler and tank, a cracked gearshift level and a loose starter handle. These are just a small part of the defects found, but the handlebar of the bike turned and the wheel spun so it was possible to roll it out of the ticket, load it onto a cart and take it to an improvised workshop. And there the main work began. The hero immediately began to disassemble the Soviet-wheeled horse. The rear lights, seat, mounted elements, tank, front headlight, fork, fenders and others have been dismantled. This is what could be removed relatively easily, and even here all the bolts were rusty, so it was necessary to use a hammer and chisel. There was no point in saving the original wiring, so the restorer simply bit off its parts. Then heavy artillery came into play, in the form of an old good helper from Bulgaria. With the help of a grinder, he managed to cut off the muffler and rusted footrest, disassemble the seats and the structure of the rear fender. It seemed that a lot would have to be saved off and broken. But as soon as the author got to the chain and crankcase, he was pleasantly surprised. The screws began to unscrew without any effort. Apparently, Iz realized that they were not going to hand it over for scrap metal, but wanted to restore it. After removing the wheels, engine, gearbox and milk from the motorcycle, only one frame remained. The hero began to systematically clean everything from old paint with the grinder machine. Due to the complex shape of the frame, he also had to remove LCP manually using chemistry. He also had to tinker with the tank. The fasteners of the decorative overlays were covered with rust. There was mechanical cleaning from paint carried out. The same thing was done by the author with the side covers and rear fender. Then all tires were removed and discs were polished to perfection. At this point, dismantling work was 100% complete. The restorer covered the main part with primer. For protective covers he made new fasteners and tinkered a bit with the body. They were together with few tank and rear fender additionally plastered to eliminate defects metal. The tank turned out to be a separate story, its tuning lever painted in the three shades. First he applied a silver base. Then he covered everything with black metallic and on it using a polyethylene bag created an effect of patina. The final layer was a deep red-violet shade that slightly glowed through previous layers. Such a tint could decorate any custom motorcycles. While primer dried up, restorer took up power part. He removed protective covers and saw chain of gearbox without obvious signs of wear. Then he unscrewed cylinder inside, which opened it up practically ideal mirror. Piston looked much worse, but there were no burnouts, chips or other serious defects on it. When it came time for brake drum chain, guard and sprockets, hero had to spend a long time clearing dirt. During time spent in oblivion, these elements were covered with layer of earth. It was possible to remove it only mechanically, after which for reliability elements were washed using active foam. It allowed getting rid of all contaminants and old grease. After this unpleasant phase, restorer returned on path of creativity. He disassembled headlight, polished it and covered with primer. All components, speedometer, sensors, overlays and others were thoroughly washed and chrome frame was polished to mirror state. On next stage, author applied black base layer on frame side covered front fork fenders and discs. Plus, he covered the already painted tank with varnish, slightly made it with sandpaper, and then polished it. The part began to literally glow. To return it to its original appearance, he installed side steel base and put rubber pads on them. It was the turn of the headlight. He painted it in a deep black color, then carefully assembled it into completely cleaned components. The only thing that had to be replaced was the powerful lamp with a classic yellow glow. In order not to waste time, the restoration enthusiast took up the engine and clutch. He soaked the cylinder in chemistry and cleaned the rest for a very long time. During assembly, he used sealant and the joint between large parts, between small ones, new gaskets and material like paronite. He carefully tightened all connections and returned to painting work. On the fenders, work and covers, the author also made a semblance of patina, and after drying LPC applied a red-violet layer. During drying of paint he went and bought 2 tires which he immediately put on discs, and at the same time dealt with bearing installed, new knobs and performed pumping. Wheels transformed beyond recognition. The moment of transition to assembly came. The hero disposed of most of the old bolts. Instead he used new fasteners, springs and rear shock absorbers. They quickly took their rightful place, along with footrest, fork, brake drums and wheels. The outlines of the future masterpiece began to emerge. The next in assembly was the engine. In just a few minutes the ice was secured in place. Then the restorer began on the most difficult stage, forming the wiring. He soldered connections to prevent breakage. After completing work on electrical wiring and connecting spark plug, hero pumped fuel into cylinder and made test start of engine. IZH's classic instantly started. Then everything went smoothly. Headlight chair and guard to it were mounted very quickly. After them, hero fixed polished handlebar and put new rubber handles on it. The look became even more interesting. Both knees and mufflers were attached immediately. They remained original after good grinder and polishing. At final stage, restorer lifted tank onto frame, connected fuel hoses and installed seat with the rear fender. He did not bother about saddle and just plugged in with eco leather. It turned out practical and budgetary. It remained only to mix gasoline with oil, pour into tank and twist starter handle. As soon as this happened, engine roared and started its first full-fledged warm-up resuscitation. Hero immediately conducted test drive and seemed to go back 50 to 60 years in past, but the motorcycle in such condition would be perceived as something fantastic. Thanks for watching and also for the likes and subscriptions to the channel. See you soon.